What if everything you learned about human history is incomplete? Not wrong, just incomplete. The official timeline says humans developed agriculture around 10,000 years ago. Stone tools came before bronze. Bronze came before iron. Civilizations progressed in a straight line from primitive to advanced. That's what the textbooks say. But evidence keeps surfacing that doesn't fit this neat timeline. Artifacts that shouldn't exist. Technologies that appeared too early. Structures built with methods we can't replicate today. And whenever these discoveries surface, something interesting happens. They disappear, get reclassified, buried in archives, or explained away with theories that crumble under scrutiny. Documents show a pattern. Researchers who push too hard lose funding. Insiders who speak up face consequences. Evidence that challenges accepted history gets locked away, not because it's wrong, because it's inconvenient. Today, we're examining 10 discoveries that challenge the accepted timeline of human history, each one backed by documentation, verified by multiple sources, yet somehow missing from mainstream education. These aren't theories. These are physical objects, documented finds, witnessed events. The evidence exists in archived reports, classified documents, testimony from credible experts who risked their careers to speak. Fair warning, what you're about to hear contradicts decades of established archaeological consensus. But the evidence doesn't care about consensus. It simply exists, waiting to be examined. 10 cases, 10 discoveries, one undeniable pattern. The timeline we've been taught is missing crucial pieces. And those missing pieces reveal something remarkable about who we are and where we came from. The question isn't whether these discoveries happened. The documentation proves they did. The question is why they've been kept quiet. Number 1. The aluminum wedge of Aiud. In 1973, Romanian workers excavated along the banks of the Mureș River near Aiud. They were digging foundations for a new construction project. About 30 feet down, they hit something. 3 objects buried together in the same layer of earth. 2 were immediately recognizable. Mastodon bones, large extinct mammals that died out roughly 10,000 years ago. The third object was different. A wedge-shaped piece of metal, about 8 inches long, roughly 5 pounds in weight, covered in a thick layer of oxide that indicated significant age. The workers sent all 3 objects to the Archaeological Institute of Cluj-Napoca for analysis, standard procedure for unusual finds. The bones were dated using established methods, 10,000 years old, maybe 11,000, right in line with when mastodons went extinct in that region. Then they analyzed the metal wedge, aluminum alloy, composed of 12 different metals, including aluminum at 89% purity. Here's the problem. Aluminum wasn't isolated as a pure element until 1825. Industrial production didn't begin until 1854. The refining process requires electrolysis, advanced metallurgy, industrial infrastructure. Nothing any ancient civilization possessed, yet this object was found in the same geological layer as bones that are 10,000 years old. Same depth, same sediment, same time frame. Dr. Florin Gheorghita examined the artifact extensively. His analysis confirmed the composition. He noted tool marks on the surface, signs of machining, evidence the wedge was part of a larger mechanism. The oxide layer was tested independently. Results showed the patina formed over centuries, not decades, centuries. Multiple laboratories verified the findings. The composition remained consistent across all tests. So the Institute locked it away, classified it as an anomaly, removed it from public display. Official explanation must be modern contamination. Somehow, a contemporary aluminum object ended up 30 feet down in sediment that hasn't been disturbed for 10 millennia. That explanation requires more faith than the alternative. Either mastodons were still alive in the 19th century, or someone was manufacturing precision aluminum alloy 10,000 years ago. Neither option fits the accepted timeline. So the evidence sits in storage, away from questions, away from scrutiny. But the documentation exists. The analysis is recorded. Multiple experts verified the impossible. That wedge challenges everything we think we know about technological development, and that's exactly why it disappeared from view. Number 2. The Antikythera mechanism. 1900. Greek sponge divers discover a Roman shipwreck off the coast of Antikythera Island. The ship went down around 70 to 60 BC, over 2,000 years ago. Among the salvaged artifacts is a corroded lump of bronze. Doesn't look like much, gets stored with other recovered items. Then, in 1902, it splits open, and inside are gears. Precise gears, interlocking mechanisms, differential gearing systems. Technology that wasn't supposed to exist for another 1,500 years. Archaeologist Valerios Steas examined it first. He recognized immediately that this wasn't decorative. This was functional machinery. Over the next century, researchers used increasingly advanced technology to study the mechanism. X-rays revealed the internal structure. CT scans showed details invisible to the naked eye. What they found was staggering. 30 interlocking bronze gears, calibrated to track astronomical movements, solar eclipses, lunar phases, planetary positions. It calculated the timing of the Olympic Games, predicted eclipses years in advance, tracked the irregular orbit of the moon with accuracy that wouldn't be matched until the 14th century. Professor Derek DeSola Price from Yale spent decades studying it. His 1974 paper detailed the sophistication. He called it more complex than any other artifact from that era. By centuries, the engineering required differential gears. Those weren't reinvented until the 16th century, at least according to the official timeline. Someone in ancient Greece built an astronomical computer with precision that rivals modern craftsmanship, using techniques that were supposedly lost and not rediscovered for over a millennium. Think about what that means. This level of mechanical engineering didn't just appear from nowhere. It required decades, maybe centuries, of development, trial and error, accumulated knowledge, which means there should be earlier versions, simpler prototypes, a clear progression of development. But there isn't. The Antikythera mechanism stands alone. No precursors, no contemporary examples, just this single, impossibly advanced device. Either the Greeks had technology far beyond what we've given them credit for, or they inherited it from an earlier source. Both options rewrite history. So for decades, the mechanism was dismissed as a curiosity, an outlier, an exception. But exceptions don't exist in a vacuum. They point to missing knowledge, to gaps in our understanding. That mechanism proves ancient civilizations possessed capabilities we've erased from the timeline. And once you see that, you start wondering what else has been erased. Number 3. The Baghdad Batteries. 1936. German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig is working at the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad. He's cataloging artifacts recovered from Parthian sites, dating from around 200 BC to 200 AD. Among the collection, he notices something unusual. Clay jars, about 5 inches tall. Each contains a copper cylinder. Inside the cylinder, an iron rod, the top sealed with asphalt. Koenig recognizes the configuration immediately. It's a galvanic cell, a battery. He publishes his findings in 1938, proposes that ancient Parthians used these devices to generate electricity, possibly for electroplating gold onto silver objects. The archaeological community dismisses it. Electricity is a modern discovery. Ancient cultures couldn't have understood electrical principles. Then, in 1949, engineer Willard Gray at General Electric built a replica, used the exact materials and construction, filled it with an acidic solution like grape juice. It generated voltage. Not much, about 1.1 volts, but consistent, measurable electricity. Multiple engineers replicated the experiment. Same results. These devices functioned as primitive batteries. When connected in series, they could produce significant voltage. Dr. Arne Egebrecht, director of the Rumer and Pelizaeus Museum, demonstrated electroplating using replica batteries in 1978. He successfully plated a silver figurine with gold in 2 hours. The process worked. Ancient Parthians could have used this method. It explains certain artifacts with inexplicably thin, even gold plating. Plating that's too uniform for mechanical application. But here's what doesn't make sense. Where did they get this knowledge? Electrochemistry wasn't formalized until the 18th century. Luigi Galvani's experiments with frog legs happened in 1780. The Parthians supposedly stumbled onto electrical generation 1500 years early, by accident, without understanding the principles. That's the official explanation. Lucky accident? Random discovery? Nothing to see here. Except the batteries showed deliberate design, specific material choices, careful construction. This wasn't trial and error. Someone understood what they were building. And if they understood electricity, what else did they know? Where did that knowledge come from? Those questions don't get asked in mainstream archaeology, because the answers lead to uncomfortable places, to knowledge that existed before it should have, to technology that doesn't fit the approved timeline. So the Baghdad batteries sit in museums, labeled as ceremonial objects or storage vessels. Their true function, conveniently ignored. But the replicas still generate power. The electroplating still works. The evidence still exists. And it still contradicts everything we've been taught about technological development. Number 4. The Piri Reis Map. November 9, 1929. A group of scholars discovers something remarkable in the Topkapi Palace Library in Istanbul. An old map, drawn on gazelle leather. The cartographer was Piri Reis, an Ottoman admiral. He created this map in 1513, used it for navigation in the Mediterranean and Atlantic. Nothing unusual about that. Lots of maps from that era exist, except this one shows something impossible. The coastline of Antarctica, accurate detail, mountain ranges, geographic features. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820. That's 307 years after Piri Reis drew his map. And here's the really strange part. The map shows Antarctica without ice, the coastline beneath the ice sheet, mountains that are currently buried under thousands of feet of ice. That coastline hasn't been visible for at least 6,000 years, possibly longer. In 1966, Professor Charles Hapgood from Keene State College analyzed the map with his students. He compared it to modern seismic data that shows the actual rock surface beneath Antarctic ice. The correlation was undeniable. Piri Reis somehow had access to maps showing Antarctica's true coastline, the land beneath the ice. The professor contacted the U.S. Air Force Cartography Unit. They confirmed the accuracy. The map showed details that modern civilization only confirmed using ground-penetrating radar and seismic imaging. Piri Reis himself noted in the map's margin that he compiled it from older source maps, some dating back to the 4th century BC or earlier, maps from the Library of Alexandria before it burned. So someone mapped Antarctica before 6,000 years ago, when the continent was ice-free, using surveying techniques that produced accurate longitude readings. Calculating longitude requires precise timekeeping. Chronometers weren't invented until 1735. Yet these ancient maps show accurate longitudinal positioning. The U.S. Navy Hydrographic Office studied the map in 1960. Their conclusion? The original source maps must have been produced by an unknown civilization with advanced mapping capabilities. Unknown civilization, advanced capabilities. That's what the official Navy report says. But that opens questions nobody wants to answer. What civilization? When did they exist? What happened to them? Those questions threaten the established timeline, the neat progression from primitive to advanced. So the Piri Reis map gets filed away, acknowledged but not explored, its implications carefully avoided. Because if an advanced civilization existed 6,000 years ago or more, capable of mapping entire continents with precision, then everything we think we know about human development needs revision. The map exists. The Navy confirmed its accuracy. The evidence is documented. But the timeline remains unchanged, because changing it means admitting we've been wrong about something fundamental. Number 5. The Dropa stones. 1938. Chinese archaeologist Qi Pute leads an expedition into the Bayanhar Mountains on the border between China and Tibet. Remote location, difficult terrain. They're exploring caves, looking for artifacts from ancient peoples who might have inhabited the region. In one cave system, they find something unexpected. Hundreds of stone discs, precisely cut, each about 9 inches in diameter, circular, with a hole in the center, like ancient records, but made of stone, granite. Each disc has a groove spiraling from the center to the edge, like the groove on a vinyl record, but carved into stone. The groove isn't decorative. Upon closer examination, it contains tiny hieroglyphics, characters so small they require a magnifying glass to read. The expedition catalogs 716 discs, all following the same pattern, all containing inscribed text in spiraling grooves. They transport the discs to Beijing University for analysis. Dating methods place them at 12,000 years old, maybe older. The hieroglyphics don't match any known language. Chinese scholars attempt translation for years. No success. Then, in 1962, Professor Tsum Nui announces a breakthrough. He's deciphered the discs. The story they tell is extraordinary. According to his translation, the discs describe a spacecraft that crash-landed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. The survivors, called the Dropa, took refuge in the caves. They attempted to communicate with local tribes, but were misunderstood and feared. Professor Tsum Nui publishes his findings. The Beijing Academy of Prehistory immediately suppresses his work, forces him to retract, forbids further publication on the subject. His career ends. The discs disappear from public display. But others examined them before they vanished. Russian scientists requested samples in 1968, ran tests, discovered the discs contained high concentrations of cobalt and other metallic elements, unusual for naturally formed stone. When placed on a special turntable, the discs hummed, produced a vibration, as if they held an electrical charge or resonated at specific frequencies. Dr. Vyacheslav Syzev documented these experiments. His reports note the discs exhibited properties inconsistent with naturally occurring granite. Photographs exist. Documentation exists. Multiple scientists examined these objects before they disappeared. The official explanation? The hieroglyphics are natural markings. The spirals are erosion patterns. The discs are just rocks. But erosion doesn't create uniform grooves spiraling in perfect mathematical progression. Nature doesn't carve repeating symbols requiring magnification to see. Someone made these discs, inscribed them with information, 12,000 years ago. If Professor Tsum Nui's translation was even partially accurate, it describes contact with something not from Earth, 12 millennia ago. That contradicts everything. So the evidence got locked away, the professor silenced, the story buried. But the documentation remains. The photographs exist. Scientists verified the anomalies before the discs vanished. And that verification is enough to know something remarkable was found. Something that didn't fit. Something that needed to disappear. Number 6. The Koso Artifact. February 13, 1961. 3 rockhounds are searching for geodes in the Koso Mountains of California. Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike Mikesell. They're looking for mineral specimens to sell. They find a geode. Looks normal, about 6 inches tall, covered in fossils and rock incrustations. Back at the shop, Mike Mikesell cuts it open with a diamond saw. The blade hits something hard, ruins the blade. 10-inch diamond saw blade destroyed. Inside the geode is an object, metallic, hexagonal, clearly manufactured. A ceramic cylinder surrounds a metal core. 2 copper components. One resembles a nail or shaft. The other looks like a washer. X-rays reveal more details. The internal structure shows something that looks exactly like a spark plug. Same basic design. Same configuration. Here's the problem. The rock encasing it contains fossils dating to 500,000 years ago, maybe more. The crystalline structure of the geode indicates it formed over immense time, tens of thousands of years minimum. Spark plugs weren't invented until the 1880s. Internal combustion engines didn't exist before the 19th century. So how does a spark plug end up encased in a rock 500,000 years old? Geologists who examined it were baffled. The rock was genuine, not manufactured, not artificially aged. The fossils were real, the crystalline structure consistent with natural formation over vast time. Ron Calais, an engineer, examined photographs and X-rays. He identified the internal component as matching champion spark plug designs from the 1920s. That explanation seemed to solve it. Modern spark plugs somehow got embedded in old rock. Mystery solved. Except it doesn't explain how. Geodes don't form around objects in decades. The crystallization process takes millennia. The fossils embedded in the rock are genuinely ancient. Virginia Maxey kept the artifact, refused to allow further scientific testing, said too many people were trying to debunk it without proper analysis. The original object disappeared after she passed away. Only photographs and X-rays remain. But those images show something undeniable. A manufactured object inside a genuinely ancient rock formation. Two possibilities exist. Either the rock isn't as old as it appears, which contradicts geological analysis, or the object inside is far older than it should be. Both options are problematic. Both challenge accepted understanding. So the artifact got dismissed, called a hoax, an anomaly, contamination. But the saw blade was real. Mike Meixel destroyed a 10-inch diamond blade cutting into it. That blade hit something harder than geode matrix, something metallic, something manufactured. The X-rays show internal structure, components, assembly, not natural formation. 3 witnesses examined it, photographed it, documented it, before it vanished from public access. And what they documented doesn't fit anywhere in the accepted timeline. An electrical component inside rock that predates electricity by hundreds of thousands of years. That's not supposed to be possible, so it gets erased, explained away, forgotten. But the documentation exists, and documentation doesn't lie. Number 7. The Klerksdorp spheres. South African miners working near Klerksdorp have been finding these for decades. Small spheres, about 1 inch in diameter, perfectly round or nearly so, made of pyrophyllite, a soft metamorphic rock. Nothing unusual about spheres forming naturally in rock. Happens through mineral deposits and geological processes. Except these spheres have grooves, parallel grooves, running around the equator, 3 parallel channels, precisely spaced, mathematically consistent. Over 200 have been found, all in Precambrian rock, dating to approximately 3 billion years ago. That's billion with a B. Before complex life existed on Earth, before multicellular organisms, before anything we'd recognize as life. Museum curator Roelf Marx examined dozens of these spheres at the Klerksdorp Museum. He noted the precision of the grooves, the uniformity, the mathematical spacing. Nature doesn't create parallel grooves with precise spacing. Water erosion creates random patterns. Mineral deposits don't form geometric lines. These grooves are deliberate, machined, created by something with intent and capability. Geologists argue they're concretions, natural formations, the grooves caused by compression or crystal structure. But that doesn't explain why the grooves are always parallel, always equidistant, always following the same pattern. Dr. Roelf Marx tested the hardness. Pyrophyllite rates about 3 on the Mohs scale, soft, easily scratched. You can carve it with a fingernail. Yet these spheres show no weathering, no erosion damage, despite being 3 billion years old. And they balance perfectly. One sphere was tested on a perfectly flat surface. It rotated on its own, no external force, just perfect balance and minimal friction. That level of precision requires manufacturing, deliberate construction, not random geological processes. Some spheres are hollow. When shaken, something rattles inside. X-rays show internal structures, chambers, nothing that should exist in a natural concretion. The official explanation keeps changing. First, they were natural. Then they were made by ancient humans. Then the dating was questioned. Then they were called natural again. That's what happens when evidence doesn't fit. The explanation shifts. Anything to avoid the uncomfortable conclusion. Because if these spheres are artificial, they're 3 billion years old. Before complex life, before anything capable of creating them existed. That means either the dating is catastrophically wrong, or something we don't understand was present on Earth 3 billion years ago. Both options dismantle fundamental assumptions about geology, about evolution, about the history of life itself. So the spheres sit in museums, labeled as curiosities, their implications carefully ignored. But they exist, in Precambrian rock, with precise geometric grooves, and nobody can explain how they got there. The evidence is physical, the dating is scientific, the precision is measurable, and none of it fits the timeline we've been taught. Number 8. The London Hammer, June 1934. Max and Emma Hahn are walking near London, Texas, Red Creek. They notice a piece of wood protruding from rock. It's embedded in limestone. They take it home, put it on a shelf. Nobody thinks much of it. Years later, their son breaks open the rock. Inside is a hammerhead, iron, with a wooden handle. Standard hammer, 6 inches long. Metal head clearly forged. Handle made of wood. Nothing remarkable about the design. Except it's encased in Ordovician limestone, dating to approximately 400 million years ago. Carl Baugh from the Creation Evidence Museum acquired the hammer in 1983, had it analyzed. Multiple laboratories. The metal composition was unusual. 96.6% iron, 2.6% chlorine, 0.74% sulfur. No other elements. Modern iron contains impurities, carbon, silicon, other trace elements. This iron was purer than anything produced before the 20th century. Even modern metallurgy struggles to achieve that purity. The metallurgist noted the handle had partially turned to coal, the transformation consistent with the rock's age, wood fossilizing through mineral replacement. But the metal showed no corrosion, despite being iron, despite supposedly sitting in rock for hundreds of millions of years. Iron oxidizes, rusts, degrades. Yet this hammerhead remained pristine. The crystalline structure of the limestone indicated natural formation, not manufactured, not artificially created. Genuine sedimentary rock formed over immense time. So how does a forged iron hammer end up inside 400 million year old limestone? Skeptics argue it's a 19th century hammer that got buried. Limestone formed around it rapidly through mineral-rich water, but limestone formation takes millennia. The rock structure shows consistent layers, no evidence of rapid deposition. The handle's transformation to coal supports ancient age. That process requires time, pressure, specific conditions maintained over geological timeframes. Others suggest the rock is younger than claimed, that the dating methods are wrong. But the rock formation is consistent with Ordovician limestone throughout the region. Same composition, same structure, same fossil evidence. The hammer represents something that shouldn't exist. A forged iron tool, made with metallurgical purity we couldn't achieve until recently. Inside rock that predates tool-making by hundreds of millions of years. That's not possible according to established geology and paleontology. Humans didn't exist 400 million years ago, neither did any tool-making species. So the hammer gets labeled an anomaly, a curiosity, sidelined from serious academic study. But it exists. The iron is real, the purity measurable, the encasing rock genuine, and nobody can explain it. Not within the accepted framework of human history. The evidence sits there, physical, testable, documented, contradicting everything, questioning everything, demanding answers that don't fit the timeline. Number 9. The Nampa figurine. July 1889. Workers are drilling a well in Nampa, Idaho. They're using a steam pump, boring down through layers of earth. At a depth of 320 feet, the drill brings up something unexpected. A small clay figurine, about 1.5 inches long. It's a human figure, female, finely detailed, shows evidence of careful craftsmanship, baked clay, hardened deliberately. The foreman, M.A. Kurtz, examined it, recognized immediately it wasn't natural. Someone made this, deliberately sculpted, fired for hardness. The geological layer it came from dated to approximately 2 million years ago, Pliocene epoch, before modern humans existed, before Homo sapiens evolved. Professor F. W. Putnam from Harvard examined the figurine. He verified its authenticity, noted the craftsmanship, published findings in the Proceedings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Geologist George Frederick Wright analyzed the drilling site, confirmed the depth, verified the geological layers were undisturbed, no evidence of later intrusion. The figurine showed age-appropriate weathering, iron oxide staining consistent with long burial in those specific soil conditions. So here's the problem. This wasn't crude, wasn't primitive. This showed artistic skill, understanding of human anatomy, controlled firing technique, capabilities that modern humans didn't possess 2 million years ago, because modern humans didn't exist 2 million years ago. The accepted timeline says Homo habilis existed then. Early hominids, using simple stone tools, no art, no sculpture, no ceramic technology. Yet this figurine demonstrates all three: advanced skills, refined technique, artistic sensibility. The drilling method rules out contamination. The steam pump brought it up from 320 feet, through undisturbed geological layers. No way for a surface object to reach that depth. Multiple experts verified the find, published in scientific journals, documented with photographs and detailed analysis. Then it got quietly shelved, labeled an unexplained anomaly, removed from mainstream archaeological discussion. Because accepting it means accepting that someone with advanced capabilities existed 2 million years ago. Someone who created art, who understood ceramics, who sculpted recognizable human forms. That demolishes the timeline, the neat progression from primitive to advanced, the evolutionary models we've built everything on. So the figurine disappeared into storage, still exists, still documented, still verified by credible scientists, but conveniently forgotten, not taught, not displayed, not discussed, because some evidence is too disruptive, too challenging, too fundamentally opposed to accepted understanding. The Nampa figurine proves someone was creating sophisticated art 2 million years ago. Physical evidence, from verified depth, examined by experts. That evidence hasn't changed. The figurine hasn't changed. What changed was the decision to ignore it, to pretend it doesn't exist, to maintain the timeline regardless of contradicting evidence. But the documentation remains. In archive journals, in scientific proceedings, in verified reports. And documentation doesn't stop being true just because it's inconvenient. Number 10. The Grooved Spheres of Betts. March 27, 1974. Terry Betts and his family are inspecting fire damage on their property near Fort George Island, Florida, clearing brush, assessing the damage. Terry's son Wayne spots something in the ashes, a metallic sphere, perfectly smooth, about 8 inches in diameter, polished steel, no visible seams, no markings. They take it home, place it on a shelf. Doesn't seem dangerous, just unusual. 2 weeks later, Terry's playing guitar. The sphere begins humming, vibrating, resonating with the guitar's frequency. Then it starts rolling, on its own, across the floor, changes direction, avoids falling off edges, like it's self-aware, self-correcting. They set it on a perfectly level table. It rolls to the edge, stops, reverses direction, rolls back, stops, returns again, for minutes. No external force, no visible mechanism, just autonomous movement. The family contacts the media. Researchers arrive, scientists from the Navy, experts from aerospace companies. Dr. Carl Williston from Omega-1 Institute examines it, brings equipment, runs tests. X-rays reveal something extraordinary. Internal structure, multiple layers, a sphere within the sphere, different densities, and something else, an object inside that's denser than anything they can identify. The sphere weighs about 21 pounds, heavier than solid steel of that size should weigh. The internal mass concentration suggests materials denser than lead. When placed on a table, it emits low-frequency sounds, below human hearing, but detectable on instruments. Pulses, regular patterns, like a signal. The Navy researchers test it extensively. Can't determine composition. The surface doesn't match any known alloy. Too perfect, too uniform. No tool marks, no manufacturing evidence. They measure magnetic properties. The sphere generates its own field, not strong, but consistent, self-contained, like it has an internal power source. At one point, it stops moving, goes dormant, for days, then suddenly activates again, begins rolling, humming, responding to vibrations. Scientists propose theories. Maybe it's from a satellite, maybe industrial ball bearing, maybe naval equipment, but nothing explains the internal structure, the autonomous movement, the self-generated field, the density anomalies. And nothing explains how it ended up in the woods of Florida. No aerospace activity in that area, no industrial sites, no military installations nearby. The Betts family keeps the sphere. Researchers return multiple times. More tests, more questions, fewer answers. Then, threats start. Anonymous calls, warnings, people suggesting they hand it over for their own safety. The family moves. The sphere disappears from public view. Last known location undisclosed. But the documentation exists. Navy reports, scientific analyses, photographs, X-rays, media coverage from credible sources, all confirming something extraordinary, an object that shouldn't exist, demonstrating capabilities that defy explanation, not ancient this time, modern, but equally impossible to explain, which raises a different question. If objects like this exist now, in the present, with capabilities we can't explain, what does that say about objects found in ancient strata? Maybe the question isn't, how did advanced technology exist in the past? Maybe the question is, where does this technology come from at all? The Betts sphere proves we don't have all the answers. Not about the past, not about the present. Some things exist outside our understanding, and when they surface, they get buried again, hidden, classified, removed from public scrutiny. Because questions are dangerous, especially questions without comfortable answers. 10 discoveries, 10 instances where physical evidence challenged the accepted timeline of human history. The aluminum wedge of Ayud, precision alloy 10,000 years too early. The Antikythera mechanism, computing technology 15 centuries ahead of schedule. The Baghdad batteries, electrical generation before electrical theory existed. The Peary race map, accurate cartography of ice-free Antarctica from 6,000 years ago or more. The Dropa stones, inscribed discs describing impossible events 12 millennia past. The Koso artifact, modern technology embedded in ancient rock. The Klerksdorp spheres, precisely grooved objects from 3 billion years ago. The London hammer, forged iron of impossible purity in 400-million-year-old limestone. The Nampa figurine, sophisticated ceramic art from 2 million years before Homo sapiens. The Betts sphere, self-propelled metallic object with unexplainable properties. The pattern is undeniable. When discoveries contradict established timelines, they disappear. Researchers face pressure. Documentation gets buried. Evidence removed from public access. Not because it's fraudulent, because it's inconvenient. The official timeline serves a purpose, provides structure, supports academic careers, validates textbooks and curricula. Evidence that disrupts this timeline threatens the entire framework, questions expertise, challenges authority, demands explanation, so it gets contained, reclassified, stored away where curious minds won't stumble across it. But physical evidence doesn't stop existing. The objects remain. The documentation persists. The questions multiply. What does it mean when precision technology appears thousands of years before its supposed invention? When art and sophistication exist millions of years too early? When objects demonstrate capabilities we still can't explain? It means our timeline is incomplete. The progression from primitive to advanced isn't as linear as we've been taught. Knowledge existed, was lost, perhaps rediscovered, perhaps never fully lost at all. Ancient civilizations possessed capabilities we've systematically erased from history, not because historians are malicious, because evidence that doesn't fit gets ignored, set aside, eventually forgotten. But patterns emerge. Enough anomalies accumulate. Enough credible experts document impossible findings. Enough physical evidence survives the suppression. And those patterns tell a different story. About human capability. About technological development. About civilizations that rose and fell before recorded history began. The timeline we've accepted is a framework, useful for organizing information, but not complete, not accurate in every detail, not the final word. These 10 discoveries prove that they exist, they're documented, they're physical and testable, and they don't fit, any of them, anywhere in the accepted progression. That's not coincidence. That's evidence. Evidence of something larger, something we've been systematically taught to ignore. The question isn't whether these discoveries happened. The documentation proves they did. The question is what we do with that evidence. Ignore it, explain it away, or examine it honestly and adjust our understanding. Truth doesn't require permission. It simply exists, waiting to be acknowledged. These 10 cases are just the beginning. Hundreds more exist, buried in archives, locked in storage, classified beyond public access. Each one challenging the timeline, each one demanding explanation, each one revealing that human history is far stranger, far older, and far more advanced than we've been told. The evidence has been presented, the patterns revealed, the documentation preserved. What you believe remains your choice. But remember this, accepted history isn't truth, it's consensus. And consensus changes when enough people demand honest examination of the evidence. Stay curious, question everything. The timeline we've inherited is incomplete, and the missing pieces are more remarkable than anyone imagined.